The P Diddy trial. It's time for an update. This is week 5 of the P Diddy trial. I haven't talked much about it because there are a lot of moving parts in the P Diddy trial. Let's check it out and see where we stand at week 5 of the P Diddy trial.
I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Week 5 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, wrapping up with a surprise courthouse appearance. Grammy award-winning rapper Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, arriving with one of Combs' sons today, telling ABC News he was there in support of Diddy. Taking the stand today, a special agent involved in the 2024 raid of Sean Combs' Los Angeles home. He testified about what was seized from Combs' home, including 900 bottles of lubricants and 200 bottles of baby oil. The agent also holding up plastic bags of drugs taken from the home. Jurors seeing some of the actual firearms seized. The agent showing them the serial number on one rifle was scratched off. And testifying under an immunity deal, another one of Combs' personal assistants. He told jurors about preparing for what he called King Nights, his term for hotel nights or freak-offs, saying he played a role in obtaining drugs for Combs a handful of times. He said Combs had a Gucci pouch that he kept money and drugs in. That pouch, he said, was a must-have for Diddy during these nights. 55-year-old Combs has pleaded not guilty to 5 felony counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. If convicted, he faces the possibility of life in prison. Let's start at the federal courthouse in Manhattan. Chief investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky is there. And Aaron, we have to talk about this juror first. This juror who was just dismissed, spent 5 weeks listening to all this evidence, but he won't go to the deliberation room with the other jurors. What happened here?
It appears that the juror gave what the judge called inconsistent answers to a basic question. Where do you live? And during jury selection, the 41-year-old man said he had lived in the Bronx. In an offhand remark to a court staffer, he said that he had recently moved to New Jersey. And when questioned about it, the judge said he gave changing answers. Said he was spending 4 to 5 nights a week in the Bronx, but actually lived with his girlfriend in New Jersey. And the judge said it raised some real questions for him about the juror's candor and whether he had made a deliberate attempt to try to get himself seated on this jury. He said it may sound trivial, but the judge said for him, this really raised a question of whether he could follow basic instructions when it came time to deliberate the case. So he said he would remove the juror, but that wasn't the end of it. The defense attorney, Xavier Donaldson, stood up and said removing the juror, who is black, would make for a less diverse panel. And then another defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, stood up and said that alternate jurors and the original jurors just aren't the same. And then another defense attorney stood up, Brian Steele, raised a different objection. The judge promised to think about all of it and let the parties know if he changes his mind.
Okay, earlier in the day, Aaron, it was, let's call it a scene at the courthouse when Ye showed up. What was the reaction in the building?
Oh, it was a scene. Kanye West gets out of this luxury vehicle, the Maybach you see there, walks into court, shakes a hand, and he left after about 20 minutes because he was not allowed into the main courtroom. We caught him in the hallway. He told us that he was there to support Sean Combs. I'm not sure that Combs wanted his support because we had overheard his defense attorney saying to the court security officers to only let in people who are on the list. So he didn't make it into the main courtroom, was brought to an overflow room, and then he left after just a couple of minutes inside and did not return.
Okay, so Ye wasn't on the witness stand, but a former personal assistant of Combs.
Now, Kanye coming there, Kanye just grandstanding. I don't think Kanye wanted anything other than publicity with that stunt. He might have been there to support or show he was there for support, but clearly he wasn't on the list, so nobody didn't want you to be there, bruh. So you just really did that for show. But that's just my thoughts.
What did that assistant say?
The assistant established a couple of things. Like other assistants, he said he procured drugs for Sean Combs, either bought them himself or got them from a guy that he identified as Guido, a drug dealer that other witnesses have mentioned as well. He also said he set up hotel nights for Sean Combs with the items that we've heard, the Astroglide lubricant, the baby oil, the lights that could cast the room in a red hue.
A federal agent also took the stand today. This is someone who was actually on the team involved in searching Combs' home in LA last year. What did he tell the jury about the search?
He said they found guns, and he showed the jury one of them with a defaced serial number. He said there were AR-15 style rifles, there was a Glock pistol, other things, including a drum magazine that can hold 60 rounds. It was loaded with 59 rounds of green tip ammunition. That's ammunition that is meant to pierce body armor. He also said, and the jury saw pictures of all this, they found 200 bottles of Johnson & Johnson baby oil and 900 bottles of Astroglide lubricant. The jury saw a picture of 18 boxes of it stacked on top of one another in the garage.
Aaron Katersky for us. Thank you so much. We're going to see some of that evidence in these pictures here in just a bit. Let's talk now to ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer. Before we get into all that evidence, we got to talk about Ye.
We're sitting there hanging out outside the court. It's actually pretty quiet. It's like eerily for Friday the 13th. And all of a sudden this black Maybach just pulls up, pulls back, right in front of the entrance, and a crowd forms. And that's when Ye pulls up and he walks in. And he just walks in the court. Now, this is him walking out, but same look, kind of walking in the court. You can see there on your screen, walking in. He goes into the public entrance. He's only there for 20 minutes. Now, he, as Aaron pointed out, doesn't get into the main courtroom on the 26th floor. Instead, he goes into what's called the overflow. Not the initial overflow on the 24th floor, but almost by himself on the 23rd floor. And that's when some reporters notice that he's down there. He gets in there. He's sitting next to Christian Combs, Sean Combs' son, and some of the security as well. But when about 15, 20 reporters get in there, that's when he exits, only in the building for about 20 minutes.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the evidence that Aaron was just talking about that the jury saw photos of today. These are photos, the evidence, this stuff that was seized from his home in LA.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, guns, baby oil, lubricant, and drugs. That's what was mainly found. Now, the guns, I think is a bit of a red herring because there were 6 guns that were found, AR-15 style guns, pump action shotguns, a Glock, but all of those were inside of the area where the security guards, where Sean Combs hires, were in. And there's actually a closet or a safe where all those guns could have been found inside, but the agent didn't say whether or not they were inside the storage unit or outside, but we saw baby oil. I think baby oil stacked up as high as you. I think there were like 24 boxes of it just stacked in the garage. It was a lot.
Okay, let's also talk about one of the things that we heard from Combs' former assistant about this video that was from one of these alleged hotel nights. What happened with that video?
So Jonathan Perez, who did get immunity, talks about inadvertently seeing this hotel night where he sees Jane and another man on this video, and he brings it to Christina Coram, someone who we've heard over and over and over again. That's Sean Combs' chief of staff. And she says, hey, delete it to some effect, or the next time you see something like this, bring it to me. And I think what the government is attempting to do is to show this net, this inner circle, this criminal enterprise that makes sure that these freak-offs or these hotel nights don't make it out to the public, and they're protecting the image of Sean Combs and others through that. And that's part of the RICO. But what we did hear on cross-examination, though, is something a little bit different, that there might not be a RICO.
Okay. That assistant also talked about how sometimes they set up king nights. Was that part of his job? What was that?
So that's a little bit of a different thing that I was alluding to. And Brian Steele, who cross-examined Jonathan Perez, got, I think, a very powerful point in this cross-examination, that although these king nights were something that he set up, it was only about 1% of his job. And here's the line of question I think that really Brian Steele brings it home, that he said he had nothing to do with his work. No. That he just did it because he's a nice person. Yes. And so if this idea is that Sean Combs is employing someone and they're doing the setup and take down of these king nights, and it's not part of his job, he's not employing him, he's not part of this criminal enterprise or this RICO, it's just someone doing a nice thing for him, then there's no criminal enterprise. And I think that's what Brian Steele is trying to chip away at.
Okay, so one thing about this whole Diddy case, everything they just explained, it just sounds like, the people that work for you are looking out for you. So I guess that's criminal activity because you want to throw this type of party or whatever. You require them to go get some baby oil, a little bit of drugs. That's a criminal enterprise. I'm pretty sure at that level, when you go up that high, I'm pretty sure assistants have to get some strange things for people with money, you know? So if you do your job and, you know, look out for your boss, I guess you're part of a criminal organization. That don't make sense to me. I'm just saying that don't make sense to me. And then the evidence, they talking about the baby oil, you got a gun or two seized. But yeah, I mean, you talking about somebody that's rich and wealthy, you're gonna find a gun or two, right? They don't say if it's, you know, an illegal firearm. They don't state that. They just say, hey, we found baby oil and a gun or two. What? I'm pretty sure if they ran in almost anybody's house, they would find a gun or two that could be registered to the people that live in that house. They never said if the guns were like illegal. They just said they found a couple guns stashed away and baby oil. What are we talking about, man? So that's one thing about this whole Diddy case is kind of wearing thin. You know, if acts of crime and all that were taking place and he did bad things to people that didn't want certain things to happen to him, of course he needs to be handled. But when you start hearing things like they talking about the man got baby oil. Shoot, if I go buy a whole bunch of cocoa butter lotion, I stack it up, I'm gonna be weird. You know what I mean? I don't have a whole bunch of cocoa butter lotion, but shoot, if somebody offered me a crate of it, yeah, I need that lotion. But I get ashy. But you see what I'm saying? Like the stuff they just pointed out, it really didn't sound like enterprise crime worthy type of deal. But we're gonna see what else they have to say.
Okay. Oh, we also have to talk about this juror situation, the dismissed juror. The judge made a ruling, but now it seems like there's a question.
It's weird. And at least in my over a decade of practicing, I've never really heard this before. When the judge makes a decision based on lack of candor, it appears there was some issue as to the residency of this juror going back and forth, not clear based on what they said. Now, you have to be within the jurisdiction of where you are sitting as a juror. I can't sit in a jury in New Jersey. I reside in New York. So if you're saying that you have a place in the Bronx, within the jurisdiction of the Southern District of New York, but you also live in New Jersey with other people, but you're also in the Bronx, that's kind of wishy-washy, both on a very independent issue, a very important issue, about jurisdiction, but also a lack of candor in terms of giving really detailed information. And the judge said that makes him worry about what he might have said about other things, that he might be like a stealth juror trying to get into the jury to rule one way or another. Now, the judge made a decision but said, I'll think about it on Monday, so where are you with that? Like that's kind of a question mark there.
Okay. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you. We always appreciate your help. Prosecutors in this case say that Combs used his sweeping business empire to commit crimes, violating the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, known as the RICO Act. So what are the RICO charges against Diddy, and how have these kind of charges been used in previous cases throughout history? Our Aaron Kotursky has been bringing us all the details from court every day, and here he is again to break this all down.
Break it down.
It's one of the top searches on Google. Why is Diddy being charged with RICO?
So the Racketeering Act, also known as RICO, came about in 1970 and was really established to fight organized crime, but it's been morphed into prosecuting people in gangs, in legitimate businesses, etc.
So how does this decades-old law apply to Combs's case? Prosecutors allege his business empire was also a criminal enterprise, making him millions and enabling decades of criminal activity.
Basically, the government's got to prove that there was an enterprise. They then have to show that there was a pattern of activity.
That pattern must include at least 2 predicate acts, related crimes committed by Combs and others within 10 years to prove a racketeering conspiracy.
And then they have to show, of course, that the defendant, that is Mr. Combs, that there was a hierarchy, a structure involved, and that Mr. Combs either ran it or participated in it along with other conspirators.
Prosecutors allege Combs and his associates committed multiple crimes that would fit into this racketeering conspiracy. Kidnapping. Combs's former assistant Capricorn Clark testified Combs kidnapped her at gunpoint and made her come with him, threatening to kill Kid Cudi. Arson. Rapper Kid Cudi testified his Porsche was torched with a Molotov cocktail. Cassie Ventura, Combs's former girlfriend who was dating Kid Cudi at the time, testified that Sean wanted Kid Cudi's friends to be there to see the car get blown up in the driveway. Bribery. Hotel security guard Eddie Garcia testified Combs paid for what he thought was the only copy of the incident in the elevator lobby in 2016, the caught-on-tape beating of Ventura by Combs. Garcia told the jury Combs called him Eddie my angel and handed him $100,000 from a brown paper bag. Forced labor and sex trafficking. Mia, a former personal assistant to Combs, testified under a pseudonym that she was forced to work long hours, at one time going 5 straight days without sleep, and subjected to a cycle of physical abuse by Combs. Mia was one of 3 of Combs's former assistants who alleged similar working conditions on the witness stand. Mia tearfully testified about alleged instances of sexual assault by Combs, including an allegation that he raped her on the bottom bunk of her bedroom in his Los Angeles home. These claims of sexual abuse could fall under the predicate act of sex trafficking. Cassie Ventura also told the jury she was manipulated to participate in sex acts against her will. Transportation for the purposes of prostitution. Recall that Cassie, during her testimony, said she was directed by Combs to use his travel agent to book travel for escorts for the sole purpose of freak-offs. And finally, possession to distribute drugs. 2 former assistants of Combs testified that they procured illegal drugs for him on multiple occasions. One assistant, Capricorn Clark, testified she witnessed Combs giving drugs to girlfriends and friends, something both Cassie and Mia told the jury. The RICO charge alone carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. The defense says the evidence shows Combs may be a flawed individual, but is not a racketeer. He's pleaded not guilty to all charges and denies running a criminal enterprise and denies any sexual assault or abuse.
Okay.
Our thanks to Aaron Katursky for that.
Okay, I would like to say that was a great breakdown. I was just saying, like, how you gonna connect all these dots? But you guys saw they did a good rundown of all the things that people have came out and said have been happening. And, the drugs, the trafficking, the kidnapping, and then the arson. If they can pin all of that on them, if they can, because you know how the court of law works. But because if you get the right lawyer that can do their job very well, none of that will stick. All right. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think at this point, week 5, Sean Combs will be sentenced to life? Or do you think he'll be beating this charge? If he get charged with the RICO, they say he goes to prison for life. Or you think he gonna beat it? Let me know in the comments.
Welcome back. Thanks for streaming with us. With week 5 of the trial coming to a close, let's take a look at the wins and losses for both sides. For that, Brian Buckmeyer is back as the defense, and for the prosecution, Bernardo Villalona. Let's start with today's witnesses. Okay, Bernardo, you go
Let's
first.
go.
How do you think they did today?
I love it.
So in terms of today's witnesses, we had a show and tell. So the detective from HSI was able to show and tell the firearms that were recovered from the house of Sean Combs. And why is that important? Why he may not have been charged with possession of firearm It does corroborate some of the testimony. Remember, there was an incident where a witness testified that there were 3 guns on the lap of Sean Combs as they went to try to see if they could get Suge Knight. Corroboration. It also paints Sean Combs as a person that is violent, especially when you're talking about racketeering conspiracy. You're thinking about mobsters. That's the visual you have when that officer showed that long gun in front of the jury like that. You're like taken aback. So jury, in terms of what happened today, I think the prosecution did a great job. In terms of having the personal assistant testify, also win because you got the drugs, you got the setup of the hotel rooms, and you also have that you were using Combs Enterprise money and resources to try to organize these hotel nights and to pay for some of these items that are used in hotel nights and to deliver these drugs.
So a number of things. One, the guns were found in the area where the security works, right? And there's also a safety box there where all those guns could have fit in. Now, if a predicate act would have been the possession of a firearm, especially a defaced firearm, I think the defense would be a lot more worried about in this case, but not. In this home, unlike the one in LA, there were no guns in any of the residential parts of the home. No guns in Sean Combs' bedroom. That would have been an issue. But Sean Combs, like every other American, is allowed to employ security to protect them. Am I a little worried about some of these bullets with a green edge that's supposed to penetrate armor? Maybe. But I don't know who's coming after Sean Combs. No one's coming after me. I'm not a celebrity. But Sean Combs needs more security than the average person. The drugs looks like personal use to me. It's about drug distribution, not about the possession of drugs. That's a state charge. So what's found in the home, I'm not concerned about.
Personal assistant delivering the drugs. So now we heard personal assistant, security guards, plus Jane delivering drugs. You have 3 different sets of people delivering drugs.
What we heard of this Jonathan Perez witness, as Brian Steele cross-examined him, he had specific roles as a job and other things that he did because he was a nice person, because he wanted to befriend Sean Combs. Because if you're in Sean Combs' sphere, you want to make sure you're on his good side, because being on the good side of a multi-million mogul and icon, you're going to go a lot further.
But that's still not an excuse or a defense. So if I give you drugs, I've done deliver drugs.
But that doesn't make you a part of my criminal enterprise. That doesn't make you a part of a RICO.
Even if he's on the payroll.
Not if I'm not paying him for that.
But even if you use him for any bid as your employee, he is answering your call and your direction.
There is no call of direction.
And again.
Let's talk about Jane, because she actually took up the majority of the week. Okay, for the prosecution.
So in terms of Jane, I think to make the case, you have to go back to her entire demeanor doing while she was on the stand. And this is why I say that. I was in the main courtroom doing her entire testimony. Reading the transcript does not do it justice of how this woman came off on the stand. Why do I say? No disrespect, but she's a weak woman. The stuff that Sean Combs was pulling on her, there's no way that it would have passed with me, with you, Eva, or with the average woman, right? He preyed upon her weakness. She was much weaker, 100% much weaker than Cassie. And I think because he preyed upon her weakness, that's where you get the coercion.
Explain that. How is Jane much weaker?
She was so
than
gullible.
Cassie, a 19-year-old girl.
Gullible. But let me tell you, Cassie was much more gangster than Jane. When you look at her and how she refers to Sean Combs and how she was at his beck and call, and she believed everything, that she was willing to do anything he said. And let me flip it. Even if we take out Jane and just focus on 2 recordings, yes, having to deal with phone calls. In December of 2023, once that lawsuit dropped, Sean Combs wanted to cover his butt. When he recorded those 2 calls, KK recorded those 2 calls with Jane, where he was trying to change her mind as to what her reality was for 3 years, that is consciousness of guilt. And I will focus on that if I was a prosecutor.
Ryan, as the defense.
Jane, so you go back to the charges. Jane is an alleged victim in the superseding indictment to sex trafficking. You require force, fraud, or coercion. The only force that we saw here was started by Jane when she smashed Sean Combs' head into a counter. And that force was not used to effectuate a freak off or a hotel night, even though something happened after that night. That was about jealousy. So let's put force to the side. Coercion. What's the coercion? That she entered into a love contract where he would pay $10,000 for her rent, that she said that she wanted to have a big home for her family. Where is the fraud? There is none. Those elements don't make it here.
The fraud in terms of the times that he tricked her to get on a plane to get her to come to a location.
We are sadly out of time, because I know the 2 of you could talk for many, many more hours about this. Thank you both for being here, Brian, Bernardo. Coming up, The celebrity appearance that has everyone talking, Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, is the biggest celebrity to show support for Combs so far. So what's the relationship between the two rap icons?
Man, I love how they have a defense attorney and a prosecutor up here and they going back and forth so they can tell you whose side seems like they're winning. I love it. They're going back and forth. Let me know what side you're on. Do you think the defense team is winning or the prosecution team is winning? Like I said, it's a nice back and forth. I personally think both sides have a valid argument, and I can't tell which way it will fall. Let me know your thoughts.
Welcome back to The Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy. Today, there was a surprise celebrity appearance at the courthouse. Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, telling ABC News he was there to support Combs. So what's the relationship between these two rappers? Let's bring in ABC News contributor Kelly Carter, who covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Okay, Kelly, we haven't seen much of any celebrity support for Combs. Ye turning up like that today. Is that a big deal?
Yeah, that felt pretty colossal because as of right now, he's the only celebrity that's been pretty vocal in his support of Sean Combs, and most certainly is the only one who has shown up in court to support him, or attempted to show up at least.
What's the story between these two? How long have they known each other?
Yeah, they've known each other for a really long time. I think what's interesting is that they both have kind of similar origin stories, that they both went away to college to kind of pursue that American dream. And then they both dropped out of college at exactly the same time, you know, around 20 years old, to pursue their interest in the music industry. And they both are renowned music producers. And that really is, you know, the thing that kind of connects them similarly before they became artists. And what's interesting is that the two of them have had kind of a recent complicated friendship, you know, as recently as 2022, when Kanye West tried to sell some T-shirts that Sean Combs thought were problematic. You know, he said that he thought it was really tone deaf, to which Kanye West replied and sent screenshots of their relationship, kind of indicating that they really weren't friends. And that was in 2022.
Okay, let's be real here too, because Ye has had his own drama in recent years. What impact could all of that have on this trial?
Probably not the impact that Sean Combs' team might want it to have. You know, Kanye West, obviously, when we talk about him, we're probably talking about someone who has been sending out problematic tweets, and we know for being problematic, you know, and I don't know if that's the kind of person that they want to necessarily align themselves with right now. I mean, he is grabbing headlines, not on par with Sean Combs, of course, because he's on trial, but he most certainly is grabbing non-flattering headlines himself right now. So I don't know if this is the type of thing that paints Sean Combs in a better picture, you know, than he is being painted right now.
Interesting. He wasn't in the main courtroom today. Kelly Carter, thank you so much for being with us.
So that was an update. Let me know your thoughts on the Diddy trial. And like always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.